Become a sponsor today by visiting patreon.com/psychologyis.
I'm sure a high percentage of people listening drink alcohol or use cannabis or some substance, even something like coffee or sugar. And I think it's a helpful principle to remember, just because a little bit is good, it doesn't mean more is better. And I think this is a very common misconception. They're like, oh my gosh, I drank 2 beers, I feel so good, so therefore 4 beers might make me feel twice as good. But that's not how it works. There's like a sweet spot, and you want to find that sweet spot and not let your tolerance build up so that the sweet spot requires more and more to get there. And just, I think this is a way we can help maintain moderation and control over our indulgences.
And I do think, to your point, like, I do think there are times when those experiences do open up a new realm for us of like, oh, I didn't know I could feel like this. But yeah, and that's kind of what pulls into that, almost that addiction, right? Of like, oh, I love this. This feels really good. Let me pull more in. But having those opportunities and those openings, and then saying, oh, okay, now how do I bring this into my daily life in a sober way?
Yes.
Maybe it can't be done, and maybe you just decide, okay, well, once a year I'm going to do that ayahuasca trip, or right. Or on weekends I will, or on once a month. But really, not letting that escape us, because I do know, as helpers, healers, and change makers, it's easy to pull into addiction. There can be negative consequences to our work because we're holding so much, and then again, we're kind of detaching from the people and disconnecting from the people in our lives that we love, and sometimes the things that make us happy. And so if as long as we're not pulling into those things as a full escape and like going underground, but like I said, maybe an opportunity to feel something new and different, and then recognize like, oh, why does this feel so different from like my days?
Right.
And how can I make that not be the case, right? Because we shouldn't be like suffering all week and then like weekend letting it go and going nuts and then trying to pull it back in on Monday. A lot of us when we were college age did that, and it only works until you're like 25.
Totally. And at something else, just one last point I'll add to this is, I think, like a lot of the teachings from many spiritual traditions relate to like attachment and aversion as being, it's kind of very Buddhist, but it's one of the sources of unnecessary suffering in the world is the way we get attached and we crave, or we're averse and we act on fear. And perhaps that can be applied to the use of these substances or these feel-good behaviors, to just watch out for the attachment and aversion dynamic. Are you escaping, like you said, averting something that you don't want to experience while sober? Or are you just super attached to the high or the intoxicated feeling? And if those get to be extreme, then you're kind of liable to become too reliant on it, addicted.
Even coffee, like you mentioned, like it doesn't have to be an illicit drug. Coffee is something that people can be addicted to. And for me, I always test myself with coffee because I am a regular coffee drinker. Mm-hmm. I always will have a period of time, especially if we have a break, a week or so, or a long weekend, where I will not have coffee for a few days, and just to kind of regulate myself a little bit. And luckily, I don't get any major craving withdrawals or anything. And there are some days where I just don't make it, and I go the whole day. I'm like, oh, I didn't have a cup of coffee today. But I purposefully do that sometimes, like pull it out of my daily routine to see, like, is this something that I'm using as a crutch, or am I using it as a self-care piece where it, like, okay, this does put me in a space where then I can get to work, versus if I don't have that, work's done. Because you don't want to be attached to things like that, because there might come a time where you can't do something. And again, I like to remind folks, like, we are able-bodied until we aren't, right? So there might be things that you are doing that you are becoming reliant on, and then if those things get taken away, you don't have anything. So I think that's really important to evaluate as well. Really building in those things that either can't be taken away because they're within you, right? Like your breath. Or if it is something that can be removed, okay, if it were removed, right, could I be not attached to it? Could I really have a sense of like, okay, that was fun while it lasted? Or am I going to be like, no, I have to have it? And I think that kind of goes back to your point of, I often tell my students and my colleagues, really make a list of some of the self-care practices that you want to pull into, or that you can do within your day in a time where you are relaxed and calm, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, right? Because when you're in a crisis level, that's not the time to think of like, oh, I should go to the beach, right? or I don't know, I need to take a cold shower, like that. In that moment, you are unable to kind of access those things. So having a list, literally like written down or sticky notes on your mirror, whatever you need, that can be really, really helpful. And sometimes I literally, like when I'm in that crisis mode, I just go straight to my list and like, oh, I don't think I can do that right now. Okay, maybe I can do that. I don't know about that right now. You're right. And really kind of seeing like what is accessible to me in that moment of crisis. You did mention like Netflix or TV shows and things like that. And I think that's actually important regulation. Puzzles are really helpful in regulation. Crossword puzzles. I don't know. I've noticed over the quarantine, a lot of folks, and I asked this of my students and my colleagues, do you find yourself watching a show or a movie that you've already seen and at a time when you're stressed out? And they're like, yeah, I rewatched the Gilmore Girls, or I watched a movie that I've already seen, but why did I do that? It's like, because you know the ending, it's predictable. So that actually helps regulate you. It's a calming mechanism to watch something that you've seen a million times or that you know the ending to. So yeah, it's okay to do your Netflix and chill if that's what really kind of pulls you into that space of calm for a little while. Now, if you're going home after every day and watching TV for 6 hours and then going to sleep at 2 a.m. and then getting it right, not the best way to do that. But Family Feud is something that I watch when I'm really stressed out. That's how my husband knows I've had a rough day, is when I come home and turn on the Feud because it's the same cadence, right? It's the same show every time, just a different family.
Yeah.
And that gives me a sense of like, okay, my day has been chaotic. I need to pull into something that's rhythmic and is familiar to me. Let me watch an episode or two of Family Feud, and then then we can have a conversation. Nice. So I think it's okay if you find yourself doing those things. Again, it's all about the awareness and the intention.